Acrostics of 11. What is an acrostic? Sometimes to oversimplify, you can say, well, acrostic is kind of like a crossword puzzle. Well, actually it isn't. An acrostic is where a group of words starting with a letter brought to attention in rubrics and or in some other method deliver a message in the original alphabet that is, and it is called direct from Masara, which is to pass the thought from one mind to another without change. It's the method in which God locked the scriptures where man can't mess with them. As an example, the Acrostic of 11, I know no one else that teaches that. It's just in my research over the years I've come across this acrostic, and I think it's fabulous concerning the city of Jerusalem and the prophecies connected with it, what will happen there all the way up to the end time. And I think it's a rewarding study, and I want to share that with you. The number 11, the biblical number 11, what does it mean? It means disorder. It means trouble. It means judgment. And what does it follow? Well, naturally, 11 follows 10. And 10 is ordinal perfection. It is the law, and it is responsibility. And when you fail your responsibility, and when you fail the law, you're in disorder. So this has to do with the city of Jerusalem in disorder. That's what being the biblical meaning or value of the number 11. Open your Bibles, if you would, to Jeremiah, who was the great prophet that God chose before he ever entered his mother's womb to bring forth a message that the people, God's children, would go into captivity, and the king of Babylon of that time, which would be Nebuchadnezzar, would take that captive. But the significance, prophetically speaking, that king of Babylon in the end times, as he is written in the book of Revelation, is none other than Satan himself. So it gives you a prelude, a deeper study into being able to identify and to see those beauties that God slips into the original languages. You with companion Bibles, many of you will be able to follow this, and it will be marked for you. Not all of it, but at least the acrostic as it will be listed in certain places in the Hebrew alphabet. So, having said that, as they were about to go into captivity, let's pick it up with chapter 52, the great book of Jeremiah, verse 1. Zedekiah was 21 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned for 11 years in Jerusalem. And there's that 11 for the first time, okay? And his mother's name was Hamutal, the daughter of Jeremiah of Libnah, not Jeremiah the prophet. Okay, the Hamutal means to akin to the dew. Okay, and he did, verse 2, he did that which was evil in the eyes of the Lord, according to all that Jehoiakim had done. He wasn't a nice person. He was a nice person, right enough, but he did not have the ability to look for where true strength comes from. It comes from God. Always remember that. He looked to man. He looked to his neighbors to be his allies to help him defeat Nebuchadnezzar. It's not going to happen, friend. And the sad part is Nebuchadnezzar trusted him and left him in office whereby he could take care of his own people. And he betrayed him. It is one thing to Nebuchadnezzar, having been a servant of God, actually, was converted. As a matter of fact, the 4th chapter of Daniel, Nebuchadnezzar was the author of it. And one of the most beautiful prayers in the Bible you'll find in that 4th chapter written by Nebuchadnezzar after his conversion. Okay. So here we have this king, and this will be the last king of Judah. okay, before the captivity. He just didn't cut it. He was not loyal to anything he promised. God expects us to keep our promises, all right? And then we find, let's skip to verse 5. So the city was besieged unto the 11th year of King Zedekiah. And there we have that Zedekiah reigned 11 years. Jehoiakim, as we will going to find here pretty soon in Ezekiel, reigned 11 years also, his nephew. All right. Let me rephrase that. Zedekiah will be the uncle of Jehoiakim, which means nothing to you at this moment, but just in passing, a footnote. Now, then Jeremiah ends with that 52nd chapter. And then we have the Lamentations of Jeremiah. Lamentations of Jeremiah is an acrostic from beginning to end. It is the Acrostics of 11. Now, this may sound complicated. Don't let it be. It's real simple. I'll simplify it by saying every verse, every chapter in the book of Lamentation either has 22 verses in it or 66, which is divided by 11. The first two chapters twice, the third chapter 6 times, and the fourth chapter being 2 times, and the fifth 2. Now, what do I mean by acrostics? The first 2 chapters of Lamentation it's a poem, and it has to do with the eulogy of Jerusalem. And in the first 2 chapters, each verse has 3 lines. And each chapter begins with the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet and goes through 22 verses. There are 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet, not counting the finals. Therefore, it begins with a letter of the Hebrew alphabet in succession, forming a perfect 3-line poem, but also an acrostic with a message concerning Jerusalem. Now, the third chapter is a little different. You will have 3 sets of 22 or 6 sets of 11, whichever you want to say, it doesn't matter. But 3 sets of 22 because there are 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet. But the acrostic here goes as a leaf is A in the Hebrew tongue. The first 3 verses begin with a leaf. The second set of 3 begin with beta, okay, B, and so on until you have 3 sets of 22. If that sounds complicated, don't let it be. It's just the way the acrostic is arranged. Your companion Bible will explain that in detail for you. The 4th chapter, still holding in the poem, has 2 sets, again, of 11. That is to say, 1 letter from Hebrew letter from the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, but only 2 lines each, but they're long lines. And then the 5th burst into emotion. It sticks with the acrostic of having 22 verses, but the acrostic of letters are not there because he's pouring his heart out concerning the city and our people. So, having said that, let's pick up then, if we may, this great book of Lamentations, knowing that it is the seedbed of 11s, all right? Disorder, the crying out concerning the city until God would, through mercy, would take control and bring it into the millennium time. And there it would be. Okay, so without further ado, chapter 1, verse 11. This would be the 11th letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and it reads, all her people sigh. This is people of the city. They sigh. They seek bread. They have given their pleasant things for meat to relieve the soul. See, O Lord, and consider, for I am become vile. They're hungry for what? For bread. Prophetically, what does that mean? Well, Christ is the bread of life. The bread, as it is written in the great book of Amos, 8th chapter, people, the hunger and starvation, the famine of the end times is not for bread, but it's for hearing the word of God taught in the simplicity in which he brings it forth. And they trade their very best for something to sustain themselves, but they're empty. They become vile, for there is no bread there. There's no knowledge, no truth. And it's so simple and it's so sad because we've had the truth with us always, the Word of God. Let's follow another verse. Is it nothing to you, all ye that pass by, behold, and see if there be any sorrow like unto my sorrow, which is done unto me, wherewith the Lord hath afflicted me in the day of his furious anger? That'll be the day of vengeance and the day of judgment. It's coming. In a sense, it's a good day. You know why? God's not mad at you. His wrath is not upon you. His wrath is upon our enemies. Holding with the acrostic, and we're going to skip to 22, but let's pick it up with verse 18 to hear again this sad song concerning the city. Verse 18 in the first chapter. The Lord is righteous, for I have rebelled against his commandment. Hear, I pray you, all people, and behold my sorrow, my virgins and my young men are gone into captivity. They don't have truth. They're listening to wrong teachings. That's what he's saying. I called for my lovers, but they deceived me. My priests and mine elders gave up the ghost. They expired in the city, while they sought their meat to relieve their souls. They tried, man always wants to work out his own salvation. And isn't that kind of sad? Because God already has it worked out for you. Man can't save himself. There's no way man has ever been able to save himself. Now, that does not mean that we're supposed to be defenseless, that we give up easy and all that. I'm talking about eternal salvation. There's only one way you can find that, and that way is Christ, of course. He is the bread of life. You can try to find that bread any way you want to. As of old times, they tried to build the Tower of Babel to build themselves way up above the flood where they could get to heaven that way, and they wouldn't have to count on salvation. They'd go to heaven anytime they wanted to. And it brought God down big time. And he destroyed them. And so it is with cloning. I can have eternal life if I just clone myself over and over and over. Ain't gonna happen. Okay. It may be tried, but it will bring God down. Only God brings salvation. Verse 20. Behold, O Lord, for I am in distress. My bowels as from very within are troubled. Mine heart is turned within me, for I have grievously rebelled. Abroad the sword bereaveth. At home there is as death. That's pestilence and famine, it would seem, everywhere. And to one of knowledge, look around you today. Look in the world. Look around in the world. And what's happening? People burning up school children. I'm being an old combat veteran. It's one thing on the field of valor, combat, where men fight men and so forth. But when you bring little children, that's heathenism. That's rebellion. That's disorder. That's practicing Molochism to a degree. Sacrificing children to the flame or to your will and your whims. It's heathen. It's disgusting. But look around you. They have heard that I sigh. There is none to comfort me. All mine enemies have heard of my trouble. They are glad that thou hast done it. Thou wilt bring the day that thou hast called. What day does he call? Vengeance. It's coming. God's going to take care of all this. And they shall be like unto me. Verse 22, to complete the acrostic. Okay? Last letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Let all their wickedness come before thee, and do unto them as thou hast done unto me, for all my transgressions, for my sighs are many, and my heart is faint. And let's slip right on into the second chapter, which is another set of 2 11s. The Hebrew alphabet repeated through one time to the completion. And let's go, if we would, just pick it up with verse 9 to pick up the thought. Her gates are sunk. This is about the city of Jerusalem. Don't let that slip your mind, okay? What happens there? That's our barometer. Her gates are sunk into the ground. She hath decayed and broken her bars. Her king and her princes are among the Gentiles. The law is no more. Not God's law, but the law of the Pharisees and the Sadducees, as it is written in Matthew chapter 23, verses 1 and 2. Her prophets also find no vision from the Lord. What good would a prophet be, such as Jeremiah, if he didn't get his word from God? He did. That's why you can count on it. You can depend on it. You might say, well, we don't have any prophets today. We've got all of them. We've got Ezekiel, we got Hosea, we got Daniel, and God's word doesn't change. And anytime you hear some man claiming to be a prophet that goes against those words of the prophet, you're listening to a liar, a deceiver, and someone that'll carry you right down Primrose Lane. God's word is written. It shall come to pass exactly as it's written. We have all been warned, and this acrostic, in a sense, is a warning thereof, okay, for we to receive. Verse 10, the elders of the daughter of Zion sit upon the ground and keep silent. They won't defend themselves. They have cast up dust upon their heads. They have girded themselves with sackcloth. The virgins of Jerusalem hang down their heads to the ground. You know, it is strange that our people come to a time that it's not politically correct to speak out, jar the rafters, let her fly, let truth prevail. And it shocks people when someone speaking truth comes forth. They say, that's a voice of anger. No, it isn't. It's a voice of righteous indignation of the calamity that we have going on from the 11s of this world. Disorder, in other words. 11. Mine eyes, here we come to the acrostic, verse 11. Center of the Hebrew alphabet. Mine eyes do fail with tears. My bowels are troubled. My liver is poured upon the earth. This is the very, considered the very seat of emotions, okay? For the destruction of the daughter of my people, because the children and the sucklings swoon in the streets of the city. They don't care what happened to children anymore. That's real sad. That is so sad that it just, it does cause your eyes to fail with tears when you see what they do. They don't care. And you know what the saddest part about it is? They do it in the name of religion. What is amazing, I guess I'm going to digress just a little tiny bit. Certain people we beg to go with us against these heathen. No way. No, we won't do that. And the dog comes home to bite them. They get a real good taste of it. Because within, I'm not going to go any further with this other than to say within the group, there were 10 from down south. The people that are fighting us. There's going to be some changes. Children no longer seem to count as far as they're concerned. Verse 12, they say to their mothers, where is corn and wine, when they swooned as the wounded in the streets of the city, when their soul was poured out unto their mother's bosom? In other words, they are looking for truth. They're looking for something they can get their souls embedded in, that they can have stability in life, common sense. But most of all, God's blessings. You know, if you don't have God's blessings, you can work as hard as you want to in the ways of the world. And you're not going anywhere if you don't have God's blessings, because that brings peace of mind, happiness, and contentment. That center of emotion that we covered back in the acrostic 11th verse. the very center of you, to see that peace and to see and to know and to understand. 16, all thine enemies have opened their mouth against thee. They hiss and gnash the teeth. They say, we have swallowed her up. Certainly this is the day that we look for. We have found, we have seen. No, the Lord hath done that which he hath devised. He hath fulfilled his word, and he hath commanded, as he commanded in the days of old. He hath thrown down and hath not pitied. And that's what he will do to the enemy when it comes to that time, to that date. And then skipping on to the 22nd verse to end the set of 11s, it reads, Thou hast called as in a solemn day my terrors round about, so that in the day of the Lord's anger none escape nor remain. Those that I have swaddled and brought up hath mine enemy consumed. There is so much more in that. Who has God swaddled? You know, in Ezekiel chapter 16, we're talking about the city of Jerusalem. In Ezekiel chapter 16, the great prophecy, God observed that little girl being born. And it was the city Jerusalem. And she was unclean because she had an unclean birth, because the Jebusites gave birth to her and called her Jebus. But as she began to mature, God took her and he swaddled her and he cleansed her. And as she grew into womanhood, he took her to his own. He covered her with his robe, which means he took her to wife. And he promised, this is my favorite spot throughout all time. All of the universe, this spot is mine, saith the Lord. And then he swaddled many children. He created us in the same image of God and the angels, Elohim. And so we are. And he says, where have they gone? I've brought them salvation. I made promises to them. If you do this and if you do that, I will bless you, you will be my children. And they'd go in circles, not taught, not led, unfortunately. It's kind of a sad thing. But again, in the day of wrath, you don't have anything to worry about. Do you know something? The day of wrath or the day of vengeance, you should kind of look forward to, because when that comes, this is all over. And we're home. We're just strangers passing through, but we're home. And we're home with him. Then comes the third chapter, which is 322s, a set of 322s. In other words, verses 1, 2, and 3 begin with a leaf, or let me just say it in English, A. Okay. Each word starting with A. And then verses 4, 5, and 6, each word begins with Beth, and following likewise throughout the Hebrew alphabet until you reach 66 verses. Not to break the acrostic, not to throw you off. What a perfect book, this Lamentations, this sad song. And yet, if you see truth, you see even within that sad song, there's beauty. That his mercy comes forth and he saves. He brings forth salvation. He blesses those that love him, those that he has swaddled. Chapter 3, and let's skip right on, if we may, all the way to the 11th verse for the first acrostic of 11. He hath turned aside my ways and pulled me in pieces. He hath made me desolate. And wickedness has done that to Jerusalem. And so it is. He hath bent his bow and set me as a mark for the arrow. He hath caused the arrows of his quiver to enter into my reins. I was a derision to all my people, and their song or their mocking all the day. He hath filled me with bitterness. He hath made me drunken with wormwood. He hath also broken my teeth with gravel stones. He hath covered me with ashes. And Jerusalem has had some pretty tough spells of it, okay, down through occupation, captivity, and so on and so forth. Skipping to verse 22. It is the Lord's mercies that we are not consumed, because his compassions fail not. You can always count on it. Do you love him? If you love him, he has mercy for you. He wants you to come to him. He wants you to let him know that you love him. That's the one thing. He doesn't want your burnt offerings. He wants your love. And he demands it. All right. And from that he returns his own. 23, they are new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness. They refresh every day. His mercies do. Overnight. Even while you're sleeping and you wake up, his mercies are there. And they're fresh. What an acrostic. Skipping on to verse 33 to pick up the Acrostics of 11. The third set of 11s in this chapter. For he doth not afflict willingly, nor grieve the children of men. You know, a lot of people seem to think he gets a kick out of it. Let me ask you, do you grieve your children just because you want to? Or do you correct them because they need correction? If you love a child, you're going to correct it. Well, he doesn't bring forth bitterness or weeping for no reason. He's not willing for that. Verse 34, to crush under his feet all the prisoners of the earth, to turn aside the right of a man before the face of the Most High, to subvert a man in his cause, the Lord approveth not. He's never approved of it. But his mercies are there, and it's not his will that man be corrected, but he does it because he loves. Skipping on to 44 to pick up the next thought in the acrostic. Thou hast covered thyself with a cloud, that our prayer shouldest not pass through. Now, that's in a sense, there are conditions that bring that to pass, and it has to do with whether you love him or not. You don't love him, and so many people will say, well, if I could only believe, and then they want to throw out some long prayer. Now stop and think about that a minute. And if you have to have a better understanding, bring it down to your own family, somebody you really love. And then say to them, if I just knew for sure I could count on you. If I just really knew I could count on you. Okay. I would be so good to you. Well, that's what a lot of people do to God. They tell him, I just can't be sure I have faith, because the world says you don't exist. A lot of the world says that. A lot of people smirk and giggle when your name is mentioned. So how can I just put it on myself? What do you think he's going to do? What do you do to little ants? Okay? Our Father blesses those that deserve blessing. And it's not his will that he has to correct anybody. But if you've got a smart kid, and I mean smart Alec, I'll say, okay? Don't let them go on that way. Correct them because you love them. Okay? Well, that's what he does. Okay? Enough said, point made. But when that is removed, that cloud is open, and I promise you, he hears every prayer. But that condition is there, okay? And then skipping on to verse 55. There is so much in this acrostic. Sometimes you need to make a special study of it if you haven't, the Book of Lamentations. And it's not all that long if you want to study it with me. It's in tape, and we go into some of this. 55. I called upon thy name, O Lord, out of the low dungeon. That's when you need him, all right? Take care of stuff when you can, but when it gets over your head, is there nothing wrong and no sin in calling out, saying, Lord, I can use a little help here. Thou hast heard my voice. Hide not thine ear at my breathing, at my cry. Breathing is breath of life, the soul, the spirit. Father, don't close yourself to me. Open, hear me. Hear my soul. I want eternal life. Thou drawest near in the day that I called upon thee. Thou saidest, fear not. That's what he'll say to you. You know what? Our Father controls this world. What have you got to be afraid of? Answer, nothing. You're a child of God, act like it. Don't let the things of the world put you in a box. You know what is right, act upon it, thank Him for it, and no more need be said. He will bless you always. But be a child of God and stand up for your Father. Don't be afraid to speak out. O Lord, Thou hast pleaded the cause of my soul. Thou hast redeemed my life. And that's what He does. You see how much good there is even in this sad song for those that love Him. Completing down with verse 66, which is the sixth set of 11s in this chapter. The last three verses being the last verse of the Hebrew alphabet. Persecute and destroy them in anger from under the heavens of the Lord. Ultimately, that is what will happen, and that's called hell. Okay? It's called a lake of fire in Revelation chapter 20. And wickedness will be done away with ultimately, but everyone will have that opportunity through your efforts. You're not to sit by and applaud when they slide into hell. You're supposed to try to pull as many back as you can, if you care at all, if you love your Father. Chapter 4, of course, the acrostic continues, and here you still have the same set of 22. There's only 2 lines, but they are long lines. The same. Do you understand how deliberate this song is? This poem? I mean, how long do you think it took Jeremiah, probably at the pen of Baruch, to set all this down where it came out like that? And don't you ever dare mix this up with this dumb stupidity they call the code going around now. Okay? Bible code. All right, that's nonsense. This is the manuscripts we're talking about. So chapter 4 comes into, again, the chapter of set of 22. And let's just, with no further ado, pick it up in the 11th verse. The Lord hath accomplished His fury. We see a little tense in this. He hath poured out His furious anger, and hath kindled a fire in Zion, and it hath devoured the foundations thereof. Zion, of course, is the resting place of Jerusalem. That day will come, and He will pour that fire out. It won't hurt you. We call it the Holy Spirit. And it's very soothing, refreshing, comforting, for He is our comforter. But what do the people of the earth do? The kings of the earth and all the inhabitants of the world would not have believed that the adversary and the enemy should have entered into the gates of Jerusalem, sitting right in the holy place claiming to be God. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 4 through 7. Okay. Documenting that Satan is the adversary. Adversary is one of his names. That's what he is. Would sit right in Jerusalem to deceive the children that have not studied the Word and do not know the chronological order of events, though Christ has oversimplified them in the simplicity in which He teaches, where no one should be deceived. So they just wouldn't have believed that Satan would slip right in here and claim to be God. Again, documentation, New Testament, 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, plus many places in the Old Testament. Verse 14, they have wandered as blind men in the streets. They don't know. They have polluted themselves with blood so that men could not touch their garments. That's a religious connotation. You're not supposed to touch the dead, okay? But let me tell you something. Deceiving someone and bringing about a spiritual death to them, where they're spiritually deader than a hammer, is a very serious thing. That's why you want to be careful when you're planting seeds or what you're teaching. You want to make sure it is the Word of God. Skipping on to verse 22 for the acrostic. The punishment of thine iniquity is accomplished, O daughter of Zion. He will no more carry thee away into captivity. He will visit thine iniquity, O daughter of Edom. He will discover thy sins. Do you know who Edom is? That's Rush or Rosh. It's even Russia. It's Esau. And even his offspring, that what? It's very important, that believe on Christ. All right? So there we see the day of God's vengeance. This 5th chapter is not in order, which is to tell you something. Have you ever come to that place that you're just so weepy and so sad that you just blurt it out? You know, you cry out. That's what Jeremiah did here. It's a special crying out. It is as prophets sometimes did. That's why it isn't given the acrostic. It is still an acrostic of 22 verses. But the alphabet is purposely left off because he's just crying out. He lost it as far as keeping things in order, but that even makes it all the more true. Verse 11. They ravished the women in Zion and the maids in the cities of Judah. They raped them. What this means is we're supposed to be virgin brides waiting for Christ to return. And they have deceived so many that not many are going to accept that adversary back in the last chapter that would enter into Jerusalem as Messiah, unfortunately. And they will no longer be virgins, but they will be ravished, spiritually speaking. Last verse, the sad song ends on a sad note. But thou hast utterly rejected us, verse 22. Thou hast utterly rejected us, thou art with very wroth against us. God isn't wroth against those that love him. God isn't even angry at the city. He's angry at the ways that man have done the city. And there you have the seedbed, if you would, of the Acrostics of 11. But it carries on into the great book of Ezekiel. Here is where Jehoiakim would reign for 11 years also. And actually it's a little before. But go to the 11th chapter, which has to do with the city. It says in Ezekiel chapter 11. Ezekiel is a wonderful prophecy, and it means that God commands. He does. El strengthens. That's what Ezekiel means. God strengthens. He will strengthen you. Chapter 11, beginning with verse 1. Moreover, the Spirit lifted me up and brought me into the east gate of the Lord's house, which looketh to eastward, and behold, at the door of the gate 25 men. Among them I saw Jaazaniah, the son of Azur, and Pelathiah, the son of Benaiah, princes of the people. I'm not even going to bother to translate those names for you. You know why? Verse 2. Then said he unto me, Son of man, these are the men that devise mischief and give wicked counsel to this city. How many in the book of Revelations are supposed to appear and lead? 24. Not 25. This means we got an extra in here somewhere, and probably if you went back to the adversary, you would find him. Okay. Wickedness. You don't need it. Okay. Which say, is it not near? Let us build houses, and this city is the cauldron, and we be the flesh. It'll protect us. King of Babylon's not coming. Satan's not coming as the false Messiah. As long as we just stay here, celebrate. You know, have you ever heard someone tell a Christian, it's malarkey, it's not going to happen. Christ is not returning to you all. It's not going to happen. This is the cry of the land, okay? Verse 6, you have multiplied your slaying. This is God's word to them. You have multiplied the slaying in this city, and you have filled the streets thereof with slaying. Therefore, thus saith the Lord God, your slaying whom you have laid in the midst of it. They are the flesh, and this city is the cauldron, but I will bring you forth out of the midst of it. I'm going to seethe you in it. That's what God said. It's your pot, all right. It's not going to protect you. I'm going to seethe you in it. Skipping to verse 11 to pick up the acrostic. This city shall not be your cauldron, neither shall you be the flesh in the midst thereof, but I will judge you in the border of Israel. You will be judged. Our Father is that judge. And you shall know that I am the Lord, not Satan, not the adversary, but I, the Lord. For ye have not walked in my statutes, neither executed my judgments, but have done after the manners of the heathen that are around about you. Does it sound familiar? Have you heard of any heathenistic acts lately? I'm afraid we have, my friends. Lots of them. It's kind of a sad thing when you try to bring peace and stability to a people, and even still some religious try to turn it into something that it isn't. And it's a real sad thing. Certainly it is. Okay. But knowing that God is near, verse 22, then did the cherubims lift up their wings and the wheels beside them, and the glory of the God of Israel was over them above. And the glory of the Lord went up from the midst of the city and stood upon the mountain, which is on the east side of the city. What mountain is that? It's Olives, Mount of Olives. It's where Christ delivered the great message. You know, Ezekiel explained these wheels. He said, back in chapter 1, he said, they're amber, which that word in the Hebrew tongue is highly polished bronze. And he said, these things had windows. And you could look in those windows and see people. And when the thing turned, the people that were inside turned with it. Well, naturally. You know. But here you're talking to a boy that's never seen a set of wheels except on an ox cart that went by his side like this. He said, they don't go by your side. They go like this. And he was speaking about those vehicles in which God's altar was on that came to this earth and spoke to this man and delivered this message. Turn on to chapter 22. God will never leave you, nor will he forsake you. Remember that. And he leaves promises. Chapter 22, the city is defiled. If you were to title this chapter, what city? Well, Jerusalem. Verse 2. Now, thou son of man, wilt thou judge? Wilt thou judge the bloody city? Yea, thou shalt show her all her abominations. Make her known. You know, that means you don't have to hold your peace when you see something going wrong. Okay. Then say thou, thus saith the Lord God, the city sheddeth blood in the midst of it, and her time may come, that her time may come, and maketh idols against herself, to defile herself. Christ was crucified in that city. And what goes on in that city time after time, and to the height of it, is when the spurious one, the adversary, stands claiming to be God. Okay? So that's when it's defiled most. Skip on to verse 11 to pick up the acrostic. We're about to wind up here. Verse 11 reads, and one hath committed abomination with his neighbor's wife, and another hath lewdly defiled his daughter-in-law, and another in thee hath humbled his sister and his father's daughter. Meaning, mother betrays daughter to death, the father the son, and blah, 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 and blah, blah, as it's written in Mark 13. Family doesn't mean anything. Worshiping the Antichrist does. Okay. Verse 12. In thee have they taken gifts to shed blood. Thou hast taken usury and increased, and thou hast greedily gained of thy neighbors by extortion, and hast forgotten me, saith the Lord God. Just bring her in while the sun shines, okay? Live and be happy. The world is good. It is good, but it's good when you stay under God's control, okay? Now, skipping on, if you would, to verse 22 for the acrostic. As silver is melted in the midst of the furnace, so shall ye be melted in the midst thereof, and ye shall know that I, the Lord, hath poured out my fury upon thee. You know what? Silver and gold don't melt. By that I mean they lose nothing by fire or heat. If your works are good, they are as gold. You don't lose anything. His fury doesn't bother you. You're protected. It's called the Holy Spirit, and it simply warms you. Why? Because He loves you. Now, what purpose do you have in this acrostic? Chapter 33. 3 sets of 11. 33. Beginning with verse 1. Again the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, speak to the children of thy people, and say unto them, When I bring the sword upon a land, if the people of the land take a man, each of their coast, and set him for their watchman, what are we supposed to have? Well, we're supposed to have watchmen. If when he seeth the sword come upon the land, he blow the trumpet and warn the people. It's like if you know the false Messiah is coming, you better warn the people. His sword is not the sword of the Lord. The sword of the Lord is the two-edged sword, Revelation 1:15 and 16, which is His tongue, the tongue of Christ, which is the truth, which cuts both ways. It always heals. Then so whosoever heareth the sound of the trumpet, and taketh not warning, if the sword come and take him away, his blood shall be upon his own head. He heard the sound of the trumpet and took not warning, his blood shall be upon him. But he that taketh warning shall deliver his soul. You know, if God gives you a truth, that means share it. It don't mean make a fool out of yourself, and it means protect your credibility. But share it when that opportunity prevails. But if the watchmen see the sword come and blow not the trumpet, and the people be not warned, if the sword come and take any person from among them, he is taken away in his iniquity, but his blood will I require at the watchman's hand. Kind of a serious charge, my friend. Verse 7, So thou, O son of man, I have set thee a watchman unto the house of Israel. Therefore thou shalt hear the word at my mouth, and warn them from me. That's what God's word is about. A lot of people say, well, I just wonder what I'm supposed to do. Well, read it. Absorb it. Listen to it. Verse 11 for the acrostic. Say unto them, As I live, saith the Lord God, I have no pleasure in the death of the wicked, but that the wicked turn from his way and live. Turn ye from your evil ways, for why will you die, O house of Israel? God doesn't wake up every morning looking for somebody to zap. He loves His children. He wants to lead them, but He's going to correct them when it is needed. Skipping on to verse 22 for the acrostic. Now the hand of the Lord was upon me in the evening, for he that was escaped came and had opened my mouth until he came to me in the morning, and my mouth was opened, and I was no more dumb. I could talk. This goes all the way back to the first chapter, first verse in this book by the river Chebar, where God spoke to him and gave him the message of the deception that the captivity would come to the false Messiah, to the king of Babylon, that it would happen. And he chose him out, that message would go forth. And so it does in that acrostic, and so he has set that responsibility. We not, in this particular acrostical chapter 33, it has 33 verses, 3 sets of 11. And the final verse reads, And when this cometh to pass, lo, it will come to pass, not maybe, not perhaps, it will come to pass, then shall they know that a prophet hath been among them. That prophet's name was Ezekiel. That prophet's name was Jeremiah. They were the prophets, but what was the voice? It was the voice of God, bringing forth truth, setting bounds, giving messages of warning. We could go on, and I'm going to let you study it on your own, because it doesn't even happen until in the millennium age. And that would be the 4 sets of 11 in this great book of Ezekiel, which is chapter 44. Chapter 44, inasmuch as at chapter 40 you go into the millennium, It is simply explaining what happens in the millennium. And in that 44th chapter, in the 11th verse, it says, those priests that were deceived but yet came out at the last minute, they're still going to work in the millennium, but they're not going to approach me. The Lord speaking. And then in the 22nd verse, he says, don't you take anybody but that is deserving to wife, meaning for our Father, as well as the body, many members of the body. And then he divides things into inheritances. And do you know what he says about you? In that 44th chapter of Ezekiel, that prophet. He says, don't give the Zadok. The Zadok is a Hebrew word that means the upright, the just. It means God's elect. Those that know the truth and those that are going to stand against the adversary. He said, don't give them an allotment of land. Because I, the living God, am their inheritance. Hey, that's special, friend. I don't care how you want to slice it. Talk about love. Talk about closeness, knowing God, and feeling near Him. You can't get any closer than that. His pouring out to you from the Acrostics of 11. From disorder to order. From unaccountability to accountability. That's what it amounts to. Stay accountable to your Heavenly Father. He will always love you and He will always bless you. It is His promise. Many would misunderstand within this sad song, lamentation, this eulogy of weeping. But you see, I have to know that Jeremiah was weeping for our lost people. God doesn't want to harm anyone. God doesn't want to send anyone to hell. Everybody writes their own ticket. Thank God that He is ready to tear that up, erase it. He even uses a stronger term in the Greek. He says, I blot it out. When something is blotted out, can you see it any longer? No. Does it exist any longer? No. He says, you're whole and you're clean. So He blots out that we mess up. He loves us. And He is our inheritance if we earn it. And all you have to do to earn it is serve Him. I've enjoyed doing this Acrostics of 11. Heavenly Father, thank you for your word. Thank you for the truth. Father, thank you for this acrostic. Be with us and be with these as they come into contact with people in Jesus' precious name. Amen.